What's up, Watt Pot people, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
I'm good, except it feels like springtime has sprung, which means my allergies are in overdrive.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's happening. Before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. Dun, dun, dun. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today we'll be discussing chapters 12 and 13 of The Great Hunt, where the girls start their lessons in the power, and Rand, Loyal, and Huron find a new definition of the word lost. Chapter 12 is called Woven in the Pattern, and the icon is the Flame of Tar-Valon.
Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. The Amyrlin is still trying to get out of Faldara, despite Egilmar's protests and attempts to waylay her. She gets a good look at Egwene and Nynaeve and remarks that they have a fine spark, but reminds them that the real question is what will kindle from it. The party finally gets on their way and travels toward Tar-Valon. The first night that they camp, Varen comes by the girls' tent to start their lessons. Because Egwene has already channeled and seems to have no fear of the dangers, she's at risk until she can be taught some control. Nynaeve, as a welder, is not at risk any longer because she has managed a certain amount of control without realizing it. Nynaeve wants to piece out of the lessons and wait until they get to the tower, but Varen explains that she may be advanced enough to skip over novice training and get right to being an accepted if she learns a few things before her arrival. Varen accurately surmises that Nynaeve would have a lot of trouble with the unquestioning obedience expected of a novice, not to mention the chores, and would be more comfortable with the freedom afforded to an accepted. Nynaeve decides that she should stick around for the lesson after all, but gets frustrated very quickly with all the foolish talk of surrendering and flowers. As the lesson goes on, Nynaeve's anger grows more and more until she accidentally sets a pile of blankets on fire, scaring herself half to death. Varen easily puts out the fire and tells them that this is a good example of the importance of learning control. Each night, a different Aes Sedai comes to their tent to teach them. Otherwise, they're more or less ignored on their travels. Several of the Aes Sedai question them about Rand and the other boys during their lessons, Leandrin being the worst and most aggressive. Egwene starts dreaming of Rand, and she feels that these dreams mean that he's in danger, so she decides to talk to Moraine about them. The Aes Sedai are boarding a boat to make the remainder of the journey to the tower, and Egwene asks Anaya where Moraine is. Anaya tells her that Moraine left, as did Leandrin and Varen, without a word to anyone, and the Amyrlin is not happy about it. Egwene decides to trust Anaya and tell her about the dreams, and tries to explain that these were not ordinary nightmares. Anaya says that it's possible Egwene could be a dreamer, and they'll talk more about it on the boat.
There's one thing that kind of bothers me about this chapter. So, Egwene is thinking that an attempt on the life of the Amyrlin seat, it went beyond thinking of. Now, I know that our Two River people have been hanging around Moraine and Faldara for a while, and that Egwene is about to become an Aes Sedai. However, Egwene did not grow up in a place that thought Aes Sedai were good or virtuous. Thinking of the Amyrlin as untouchable and almost godlike is new. Her reaction reminds me how easy it is to suddenly become dedicated to something so fully that you start to act more like a zealot than a believer. I may be taking this a little far with this particular passage, but the fact that she just hurls herself into this new dedication to the tower without thinking is one of the things about Egwene that bothers me a lot in these first couple books. She hasn't even gotten to the tower yet, and she has no idea about what it's like, yet she's committed without question or second thoughts to the Amyrlin seat.
Yeah, I can see that. Egilmar is still trying to convince the Amyrlin to stay, especially now that there's been a supposed attempt on her life. And Swan responds with, "You'll need slyer bait or finer nets to catch this fish, my son." I've just decided to lean into the fishing metaphors and try to point them out as often as I remember. Resistance is futile.
Nynaeve and Egwene have two different reactions when Swan spots them in the gathering of people and stares at them with that knowing look only a true person of authority can have. Egwene is worried that she's not showing the correct respects and curtsies, while Nynaeve keeps her back straight and just stares right back at her. This made me flash forward several books to when Nynaeve was tested for the shawl. Because from the moment Egwene thought of becoming an Aes Sedai, she was all about what was right and proper for the Tower. From the moment Nynaeve decides that she needs to go to the Tower, it's always been about how the Tower is just a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Nynaeve is still on her original mission to protect her people. When she tells Egwene that Rand will be all right and there's nothing either of them can do to help him, she has the throwaway line of, "Not yet." And when I think of all the things that Nynaeve will do to help Rand in the future, I just really get excited to read the rest of her awesome story arc.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish we could get there faster. She is really the only one that never stops trying to save and protect Rand.
Yeah, totally.
I laugh when I read the line that Nynaeve says, after Egwene assumes Moiraine is not spending time with them because she must have more important things to do, she says, "I'll believe she's done with us when she's dead. Or we are." She is sly, that one. If only Nynaeve knew all of the plans that Moiraine laid out that would still manipulate them long after everyone believed Moiraine was dead.
Yeah, definitely. So I love everything about the scene where Varen visits the girls.
Yes.
There's a big part of me that just wants to read it out loud right now, but I won't. I should, but I'm not going to. There's just so much that is great about it. Like right from the very beginning. To introduce herself, Varen says, "I am Varen Mathwin," the woman said with a smile, "and you are Egwene Alvear and Nynaeve Almira from the Two Rivers, which was once Menetheren. Strong blood that, it sings." It reminds me so much of something Loyal would have said. It's a shorthand way to show how much information the character knows. Layers and layers of studied history and knowledge underneath the simple exchange that's happening on the surface.
We learn about Wilders for the first time, and how women like Nynaeve basically develop a block that prevents them from touching the source at will. I like how Jordan works this in because I totally believe that the human mind would develop the kind of mental block as a measure of self-preservation.
Yeah.
Like, otherwise the woman who has no control over the power would just burn themselves out and die, just like Nynaeve talks about with the apprentice wisdoms in the Eye of the World.
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% believe that one of the hardest things a Wilder would have to overcome in their journey towards becoming an Aes Sedai would be that mental safeguard that they developed when they were younger.
Right, definitely. And Varen talks about how their mind creates the block to protect them from the knowledge that they're channeling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, yeah, it makes perfect sense. So it was a really good device that Jordan created there. So one of my problems with Egwene is summed up pretty well in the next part, after Varen explains to Nynaeve about Welders. Egwene breaks in saying, "I don't see what this has to do with me." And Varen responds, "With you? Nothing." God forbid Egwene isn't the center of attention for 5 minutes.
Right?
I know that eventually Egwene becomes an amazing woman.
Mm-hmm.
In those last few books, she's an incredible leader.
Yep.
But it takes her so long to get there, and I am just not a fan of the girl we're stuck with along the way.
True that.
She is so self-centered and manipulative, and I don't think that she has strong character. Like, she's a liar, and she treats people like they're disposable.
She's a ends justifies the means kind of person.
She really is. I mean, she has a lot of good qualities too, and I'm not saying that she doesn't. She's clever, and she's resourceful, and she's ambitious, and she's, very talented, and she does get the job done. But she is not someone that I want to know.
No.
I really don't like Egwene. And it's not because she's a female character. Obviously I've talked about how much I love Nynaeve. And even later, like with Elaine, I love Elaine. She's great. Mm-hmm. But there's just something about Egwene that rubs me the wrong way. And the more she does, like her actions throughout this series, just oh, I do not like her.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The assessment that Egwene is moving too fast and the power is going to destroy her if she doesn't learn control is a basic summary of her entire journey with the power. Like, she rushes in, she gets in way over her head, and has very little concern for the consequences of her actions.
Yeah.
There's one exception to that, though. If getting caught will prevent her from learning more about the power.
Right.
And I love that Varen takes her down a notch or two when she says, oh, there have been others like you. You're not unique. And Egwene is so sure that she's special, and Varen is all like, I've seen your kind before.
Yeah, definitely. When the girls say that Moraine never told them any of this, Varen says, well, Moraine has never believed in telling anyone anything they did not need to know. Knowing serves no real purpose, but then neither does not knowing. Myself, I always prefer knowing to not. It's totally true. Moraine is very secretive and rarely gives anything away until it's absolutely necessary. Varen, as a Brown, wants to know everything and sometimes can't help sharing her knowledge. Personally, I'd rather deal with Varen, even if she is black and tan.
Black and tan.
Yeah, because she's black and brown. She's not really black.
She's a little bit on top, but not underneath.
Yeah, she's only black on the surface.
Yeah.
Really, she's a brown at heart.
Varen has Nynaeve's number from the start. She gets her to stay and learn how to better control her power by letting her know that if she has a leg up before she gets to the tower, she'll have a lot less chores to do, and Nynaeve is sold.
Yeah, it's kind of a cheat to let Nynaeve go straight to accepted.
I think so.
I mean, obviously she has to pass her test first, and Nynaeve would have been a disaster as a novice, but it really isn't fair. I know that she has the potential to be the strongest Aes Sedai in a millennia, but she should have at least spent a week or two in Novice White.
It's almost like someone got the idea that maybe the novice accepted system needs to be revamped at some point. Like happens later on.
Well,
maybe.
and all three girls end up completely bucking the system, so.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, it's much better for Nynaeve to have not had to live as a novice.
Yes.
But it's just not fair, and it paints a huge bullseye on her back.
Yeah, it does, but it makes her that much tougher, too.
Yeah.
I love how Jordan kind of subverts the kung fu meditation cliche here. Like, trying to attain focus and stillness is just not part of who Nynaeve is.
Right.
And all the rose petal stillness stuff would never work for her. But get her anger and frustration going, and she sets the blanket on fire. That's our girl right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So Varen was actually a pretty good teacher.
Yes, she was.
She was so patient with them, despite Nynaeve's resistance, and she maneuvered her just as deftly as Moraine ever had. Mm-hmm. She gave them a ton of information, and both of them were able to touch the source in the end. And after she puts out the fire and Nynaeve was freaking out, Varen was kind and calmed her down.
She was.
It was actually a really good lesson. Way better than what they got from many of the other Aes Sedai.
And then we get this awesome exit from Varen. Mm-hmm. She basically reminds them that if they don't learn control, all kinds of horrible things could happen to them. And then says, sleep tight and have a good night.
Exactly. It's like, you're all about to die. Sweet dreams.
Here you go. So Nynaeve throws Leandrin out of their tent because she's obviously trying to dig up information on Mat, Rand, and Perrin. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like this short, quick montage of visiting Aes Sedai. It's a fast way of showing that becoming the Aes Sedai is not just about learning to use the power. There are huge political games going on, and this is the first exposure Egwene and Nynaeve have to the undercurrents of those games.
Yeah. And it's so obvious that Leandrin is capital E evil with her not so veiled threats and shady behavior.
Yeah.
I think for me, on my first read, that is what cast so much suspicion on Varen and Moraine disappearing at the same time Leandrin did.
Yeah. Huh.
She's so obviously a bad guy. It made me wonder if the other two were working with her or if they were bad too.
Right.
On the flip side, Anaya is so kind and comforting. and really talkative for an Aes Sedai. Egwene has no problem confiding in her about the dream she's having. And even though Anaya doesn't think there's anything to them, she gives Egwene the benefit of the doubt and doesn't just dismiss her out of hand like a lot of the other sisters would have done. That's really cool.
It is very, very cool. Egwene has her first dreaming, and she sees that Rand has vanished because he has triggered the portal stone. Mm-hmm. It's a nice way of not only revealing her dream talent, but also helping us sync up the timeline between the two parties.
Right. That was really helpful. And I think a really good device, because that happens again in the future a lot. Egwene will have a little dream talent scene, and we'll see what the others are doing, so we know where in the timeline everyone is existing.
Right.
It really comes in handy.
It happens with Perrin sometimes, too, because he's in the wolf dream.
Yeah. Although not as often as Egwene, I think. I think Egwene's more likely to dream about the others, whereas Perrin usually dreams about his own interest.
Yeah, he's busy.
Yeah.
Usually. That wraps up Chapter 12 of The Great Hunt. Before we get to Chapter 13, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru is brought to you by Alternate Realities and the Worlds That Might Be. You could have, like, a world with no shrimp, or with, nothing but shrimp. Just don't ask me to live there. I'd tire of it quickly. Alternate Realities. The possibilities are endless.
Chapter 13 is called From Stone to Stone, and the icon is the portal stone.
Rand wakes to find everyone except Hurin and Loyal gone, and the landscape different. Everything is pale. The trees look like they've been burned, and the half-buried stone they had gone to sleep next to was now 3 spans high and a full pace thick, covered with markings in strange language. Rand frantically wakes up Hurin and Loyal, asking them if he's dreaming. Loyal says he doesn't think it's a dream. He recognizes the stone as something that he read about. From stone to stone run the lines of if, between the worlds that might be. Rand doesn't understand what that means, and Loyal isn't sure either, but says the most powerful Aes Sedai in the Age of Legend supposedly use these stones to travel between worlds. He doesn't understand how they could have, though, since you have to be able to channel. Rand remembers the void forming as he fell asleep, but doesn't want to think about it. Hurin begs Lord Rand to reassure him that they will get back, and Rand starts to tell him again that he is no lord, but thinks better of it, and instead promises Hurin he will do his best, which helps Hurin hold it together. Rand reluctantly tries to channel the stone and fails. He sees the light of Sidin and tries to grasp it, but all he gets is the vileness of the taint. The void shatters painfully like cut glass, which it had never done before, and Rand staggers back. He tells Loyal and Hurin he will try again, but Hurin says he can still smell the trail of the Dark Friends, and maybe one of them would know how. He says it's a pale smell, like everything else here, but he can follow it. Rand likes this plan a lot better than trying to channel again and agrees. Loyal's confused by why Rand thought he could use the stone, and Rand thinks fast and says if the stones are older than the Age of Legends, maybe the creators didn't have to use the power to use them. Loyal is doubtful, but goes with it. Hurin says the trail still leads south, so off they go after the Dark Friends once more.
And now we enter the Twilight Zone.
Right?
Like, Rand wakes up in a place that is sort of like the place he fell asleep, but different. Mm-hmm. And it's just Loyal and Hurin with him. They all freak out, of course. And I know I'd freak out if this happened to me.
Yeah, definitely.
I like how Loyal describes the stone as, from stone to stone runs the line of if, between worlds that might be. I have always been a fan of sci-fi and fantasy because of how it explores if. And what we're about to walk through in these next few chapters show what would have happened in Randland if things had gone differently.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like Loyal should have been able to figure out that Rand can channel.
Yeah.
He knows that the stones need the power to be used. And even though Rand does some fast talking later, I just feel like Loyal is smart enough to logic it out that
he really
it
is.
Had to be Rand.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
And Rand should have opened up to Loyal about this being able to channel from the very beginning. I'm down with keeping Hurin in the dark. Rand just met the guy, but he should have brought Loyal in on the secret. He's trying so hard to fix this thing that he knows he's responsible for, and he doesn't want to channel the power to fix it. At the same time, he chooses to bear the burden of this alone without sharing it with Loyal, and Loyal's already proven to be a very good friend.
Yeah, I feel like Loyal has earned the right to have been told.
Absolutely.
You know, like I don't want to say that Rand owes it to Loyal, but it kind of does. Like, I don't know. I mean, I understand why Rand would be gun shy because Matt and Perrin reacted so poorly.
Yeah.
But we've already seen that Loyal is much quicker to forgive, you know, much more likely to give Rand the benefit of the doubt. And Loyal he's not judgmental, you know? I think Loyal probably would have been excited, to be honest. You know, with his excitement over the Tevren stuff, he'd been like, wow, you can channel too? This is great. You know, like, I don't know. I feel like Loyal may have been a little concerned, but his excitement and just his loyalty to Rand, you know, he knows Rand. He likes Rand. Rand is his friend. And he knows that it takes time for men who can channel to go crazy. So I just feel like Loyal would have reacted so much better. And as Rand's friend, like, I feel like with everything that they've been through together, he deserved to know.
Something that I just thought of while you were talking. Mm-hmm. Matt and Perrin grew up in a society that feared male channelers.
Right.
While Loyal grew up in a society that sheltered them.
Yeah.
And I'm just now realizing
true.
that.
Absolutely.
So maybe
he would have been way more open to it.
Yeah, and maybe Rand can't make the connection because he grew up in a society that fears channelers and couldn't even like put himself in Loyal's shoes there, maybe.
Yeah, Loyal is much more likely to be sympathetic.
Yes, he is.
Than to be afraid.
Like Matt.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Rand totally should have told Loyal. I think it would have been such a load off to be able to share this secret, you know?
Yeah.
Because having to live with such a huge secret and having that weight on him is just, it's debilitating, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like Rand would have been so much better off if he had been honest.
Speaking of the weight.
Uh-oh.
Like, Huron right away looks at Rand to get them back. Mm-hmm. And I kind of scratched my head on this. Like, living in a feudal society must be what motivates him looking to Lord Rand for reassurance. But it just seems odd that he would think Rand could actually do any more than he could. Mm-hmm. Like, Huron doesn't know Rand can channel either. So why would he assume that he can do anything about their predicament?
I guess that's just what lords do, at least in Shinar. They're responsible for their own people. They make sure that they have food and resources and make sure that they are protected from attacking Trollocs or whatever. And as a common man, Huron's used to putting his trust in higher-ups to make the decisions that will keep him safe.
Okay.
And, I mean, it totally works. Like, as soon as Rand says that he'll figure something out, Huron goes from falling apart to being totally fine.
All right.
You know, especially, I mean, if you think about Shinar specifically, Lord Egilmar runs Shinar, and Egilmar is a great man.
Yes, he is.
He's one of the great legendary generals. You know, he's kept the Shinarians safe in a land that is so close to the Blight that it's under constant attack. You know, the people are fine as long as they keep their trust in Lord Egilmar.
True.
And this is the society Huron grew up with. And he needs this. Rand isn't heartless enough to take that away from him. He really needs it. So he just lets Huron believe that Lord Rand will save him. You know,
yeah, I'm maybe being a little harsh here. Probably because I grew up in America.
Yeah, Western individuality and independence, it's completely counter to our entire culture.
Yeah. So there's that. But yeah, thanks for walking me through that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it makes sense, personally. So we mentioned in the last episode that Rand has started to notice a queasiness with the void.
Yeah.
And that it's much more prevalent when he tries to channel in this pale world. He thinks of it as rancid oil or slimy pond scum. Yum. This is the first time that the taint is this noticeable. But the nastiness will definitely be a reoccurring thing from now on.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if trying to channel in this pale world sort of bumped up the timetable on that. I don't know. Just something I'm throwing out there.
That's a good, interesting idea.
He also has this thing where the void shattered into 1,000 razor shards, slicing his mind.
Yeah.
And he feels like his head has actually been sliced from it. And I don't remember if this happens again. Is this just because they're in the pale alternate world and Sidin behaves differently?
You know, I think that is what's going on here.
Okay.
But like a lot of the other things that happen inside the Portal Stone realms, this is kind of unique to this book, and we don't really see that come back.
Right.
I don't really remember Rand's mind ever being described as shattered and cut like razors.
No.
So
no, like previously, like it says, it's always described as popping like a bubble.
Exactly.
And then in the future, I'm trying to remember in later books when it goes away, what it feels like. I don't remember it being this like razor sharp glass shard thing though.
Yeah, it's very much like you said, like a bubble popping, or just the void just vanishes.
Right.
So I think part of the weirdness of this is that it is kind of unique, and it is weird compared to the rest of the universe that we have here.
Yeah.
We don't really see that happen again. But I do kind of think your idea that maybe this is what sparks him like being accelerated might be a causing event.
Queasy grossness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because I mean, in the previous chapter or 2 chapters ago, he just barely noticed that the queasiness was in the void with him.
Yeah.
And now he's describing it very clearly as rancid and pond scum, and it just seems to have grown exponentially overnight.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if it's because they're in this alternate world where it's already a little darker and
it's just
eviler.
more prevalent. Well, the Dark One's, as we're going to find out, like
the Dark One won.
The Dark One won here, so his sway is much stronger, so maybe his taint on Sidin is much stronger as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I think so. It makes some sense in a thing that doesn't make any sense.
Aptly described. I get that the Portal Stones open up alternate realities and things work weird on different planes.
Uh-huh.
But the fact that Huron can still smell the Dark Friends is a little too convenient.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense that the Dark Friends would take the same path in the alternate world. And if they aren't actually there, then it also doesn't make sense that Huron could smell the reflection of the trail in the real world here in the alternate world.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's just, I'm looking at you side-eye, Jordan. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And while we're pointing out logic fails, it doesn't make sense that Rand channeled them there in the first place, since he was sleeping at the time.
Right.
Like, okay, so especially with Sidin, which is always described as a fight to the death to get a hold of it and then control it, there's no way Rand should be able to channel while he sleeps.
Right.
You know, like maybe if it was a woman channeling Sidar where she surrenders and embraces and it's all peaceful and whatnot, sure, fine, whatever. But not with a man. Like, men channeling is a fight, and it's fire, and it's violent, and you know, like, Rand really describes the struggle. And there's no way that he can do all of that while sleeping.
Yeah, like later on, he learns how to do some weaves and some things from Asmodean to protect him while he's sleeping. But part of that process is learning how to tie the weaves off so he doesn't have to maintain them. Like, he puts them in place and then he goes to sleep.
Yeah.
He embraced the void before he went to sleep in the last chapter that we see this happen. But but we've
already seen the difference between
Right.
embracing the void and touching the source.
And like you just said, it's always a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he has to embrace the void or enter the void in order to touch the source, but he could be in the void
And not.
without touching the source.
Correct.
But he can't touch the source without being in the void first.
Right.
So just because he fell asleep wrapped up in the void doesn't mean he was touching the power. You know, like he shouldn't have been able to channel while sleeping. It doesn't make any sense.
I agree.
I guess it's just Jordan hadn't figured out his magic rules yet, so
Maybe
it's inconsistent.
And I think this is also one of the reasons the Portal Stones don't get much screen time, especially once we start traveling, because the rules for traveling were pretty clear cut.
Right, yeah. None of this timey-wimey, wimey-wombly stuff.
Yeah. So I just can't wait for traveling to come back because... What?
It's really convenient.
Yeah, it's really convenient. But this Portal Stone stuff is like, I don't get this.
Well, and they're related because much later, Varen talks about how she was not strong enough to use the Portal Stone.
Right.
Because, like, not every Aes Sedai is strong enough to travel. So, like, the ability to travel and the ability to use the Portal Stone are related as far as how much power you can use. Although that's also an inconsistency because I am almost 100% sure that Varen can travel later in these books. So
yeah,
that, now that I'm thinking about it, that doesn't work either.
Like I said, I'm really glad we got rid of the Portal Stones when we did because this wasn't as
this is
logically
Marine staff all over again.
this wasn't as logicked out as the rest of the magic system. So
yeah. On the plus side, I want to say it that if we get past the Great Hunt, the rest of the series makes sense, magically speaking. I think by the time we get to The Dragon Reborn, that's book 3, right?
I believe so, yes.
He'd finally hammered out all of his rules. And once he's got his rules down, he stays consistent. It was just the Eye of the World and the Great Hunt. He was still fiddling around with how magic works.
Including the Portal Stones. Like, we'll see them used much better, much more clearly later on. Because that's how he gets everybody to Rudian. From the stone.
Oh, you're right. I forgot all about that.
So the Portal Stones do come back and play a major like,
but that's
role,
the last time.
Yeah, and then we're done. And we're done.
Disappeared. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally forgot about that. From the Stone of Tyr to okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get there in like a year or so.
So Ren, he's afraid to channel, so they go after the Trail of the Dark Friends instead.
Right.
Like, I'm still confused as to how Rand thought he'd be able to get them back without using the power. Like, he promised Huron and Loyal that they'll find a way back. He's just making it up as he goes along, though. I get that, but it just seems so foolhardy to make a promise he can't keep.
Yeah.
And I know he's doing the best he can, but sometimes I just want to shake him and tell him to get it together, man.
Yeah, no, totally. Like, I think the theory was that Huron was smelling the trail of the Dark Friends, which meant the Dark Friends had to be in the alternate world. And if the Dark Friends got there, they theoretically would know how to get back. So if they could track down the Dark Friends, hopefully they could track down a way to get back. Which, okay, that could make sense, maybe, if the Dark Friends are actually there. But you're right. Rand...
Come on, man.
Come on, sheep herder, get it together.
Where's Land to, like, slap you on the back of the head when you need him, right?
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, give the kid a break. He's 20 years old and he's in an alternate reality. Like, all right, I'm going to give you some time to recover from that.
I just got this picture of, like, Red from that 70s show. Dumbass, smack him on the back of the head. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
okay.
I think we can give him a break. This is a really weird situation.
Yeah, like I said, I'd probably be really freaked out if this happened to me. Waking up, I get that.
And he only has Loyal and Aaron. I mean, it'd be one thing to wake up in an alternate reality with Lan,
Right.
or like with Lan and Moraine, like someone who can channel and someone who can kick ass. He's with Loyal and Huron. How much backup are they really going to give him? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially
if you're going to be stranded in an alternate reality, those aren't necessarily the people you want to be stranded with.
It's not the A-list. No, it's not.
No, it's not. So I'm willing to give the kid a break.
Yeah. That ends chapters 12 and 13 of The Great Hunt. Join us next week for chapters 14 and 15, where Piran finally talks to the wolves and Beelzemon screws with Rand.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure that you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. If you could leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. You can tweet us at WhatPodThru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com and tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.
Stop with the shrimp. I am trying to do something here.